Sharia. And first of all, I'd like to speak about Sharia, but in Australia. And in this presentation, we'll cover Australia, very quickly the United States. And Stephane will come and speak about the case in Geneva. But in Australia, as many of you will be aware, is that through various migration patterns, Muslims in Australia have come from over 70 different nations. And this will make Muslims ethnically the most diverse religious group in Australia. And in connection with a report that was published in 2011, the Malaysia report on the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which review official documents from 44 countries with a Muslim majority. And what the report discovered is that there were significant differences with regards to Muslim family law. And it concluded that there's not a single functioning worldwide Islamic law. So, because of the variety of multiple schools of law and the different family law provisions that are influenced by local cultures where it operates, no single tradition can claim ownership of Islamic law, as that document concluded. Which leads us to the statement at the beginning of this slide about the diversity of Muslims in Australia. When we speak about Sharia, what are we speaking about? How is it understood? And these are some complex issues, and we're doing some research at the moment with Malcolm Voice and Zilda Daginstali and Brian Turner on RC grant, where we explore those issues, and we're collecting data at the moment, and I hope that maybe in 1 or 2 years we'll be able to give you some insight as how it's lived in everyday life. But before that, what we did is try to understand how it was collected in newspaper. And with other people in the team, including Zilda Daginstali, Malcolm Voice, and Brian Turner, we did some research on the presentation in Sydney, in New York, and in Geneva. The main focus of this presentation will be in Geneva in the second part with Stephane. What I'm going to do is give you a snapshot, although the research that we've done in Sydney and New York with Brian Turner, Zelda, and Malcolm. But here, what we find out is that with all the articles in Sydney that spoke about Sharia, there were 696. 54% of them were neutral. What we did is that Joshua Rose basically went through all the articles, analyzed them, and used a Likert scale to rank them from extremely positive to somewhat positive to neutral to somewhat negative to extremely negative. 54 were negative. If we split them into news articles that are supposed to be perfectly objective, and others such as opinion, features, letters, etc., we find that the rate of neutrality goes up to 72%, and for the opinion, letters, and features, it goes down to 41%. And you can see here that this is quite negative. We've got 14% of the articles that are negative for the news articles in Sydney, and 50% that are negative for the opinion piece. In New York, we find the trend was quite different. Less articles, 507. The analysis was from 2008 to a few months ago. And neutrality is higher, with 78% than in Sydney. The neutrality goes up for the news articles to 95% and goes down to 69%, but still higher than in Sydney. So the level of neutrality in New York is quite stronger than in Sydney. Now let's go to Geneva. We find that the level of neutrality is 75%, news articles 72, opinion 76, still very close, there's no difference. There's a strong level of neutrality through news articles and opinion features in Geneva. So we had this snapshot trying to understand what's happening, and we put all the data in SPSS. And we decided to, and we were influenced by the work of Anne Black on what she called the good and the bad Sharia. And by bad Sharia, she makes reference to everything that's not about finance, and the good Sharia, she makes reference to Islamic finance. And we divided the articles according to that, and we did some calculus through SPSS. And what we find out is that if we focus on the news articles on finance in Sydney, so we only focus on the news articles here. We got rid of all the opinions feature for that table. The neutrality goes down to 37%. So here for all the articles 54 to all the news articles, 72. When it comes to finances in Sydney, it goes down to 37%, but not because they're negative. Out of the 51 articles, there was nothing negative about Islamic finance. You can see the level of positivity here. 39% of extremely positive, 25% of somewhat positive. Here we find that the level of neutrality is lower because they're extremely positive. When we deal with articles that don't deal with finance, we find here that level of neutrality goes up to 79%, but you've got 17 articles which use negative comments in the article. So you can see here that there's something going in Sydney with regards to the way Sharia is portrayed in newspapers. The difference is not as strong in New York, but it exists. Here, news articles on finance, 77% of the neutrality, 15% of positive, but again, here we see a smaller amount of articles. And when it comes to other topic, 97%. And you can see there's quite a division between New York and Sydney of 97% and 79%. Geneva, when it comes to finance, the level of neutrality goes down to 62%, because here we've got some elements of positivity as well. If we add extremely positive to somewhat positive, we reach a level of 22%, which Stephane will speak about in the second part of this presentation. So here we find that in newspapers in Sydney, New York, and Geneva, that discussions about Sharia, that especially in Sydney, there's strong positivity towards Sharia in finances, but not Sharia in other levels. Here, a good diagram that shows you the news articles on finance in Sydney. Green, neutral. Blue, extremely positive. Red, positive. You can see that all the articles are not neutral. The large majority of the articles are not neutral, but they tend to be extremely positive. And that was the beauty of putting this in SPSS. We came up with a coefficient of correlation, Pearson, for those who like statistics. And we find a strong correlation in Sydney, 0.4, much stronger than Geneva and New York. So statistically speaking, we find that there was a strong correlation in Sydney, more so than in New York and Geneva. And this is the news articles on other topics. Level of neutrality is quite good. And here we've got negative and extremely negative. And of course, when we speak about the media, all articles should be neutral, just report arguments in social debates. Very quickly, I'm just giving a snapshot, but some of the work that's been done, we've been influenced by the work of Habermas on post-secularism. Habermas argues, and in a snapshot, that religion is coming back in the public sphere, and that what we need to do is have strong debates, strong discussions between religious groups and between religious groups and atheist groups, and that the debate should happen in the public sphere. What we find out is that, very quickly, if you've got articles that are negative, don't engage in the debate in a neutral way, it doesn't help with Habermas' notion of post-secularism. And Gilliat-Ray has a new theory of multiple modernities, speaks about different ways of being modern in the world. The United States, Australia, Switzerland can be modern, but in different ways, and can include religion in public sphere in a different ways. In France, for example, they will try to be modern, but not have religion in the public sphere. In Australia, religion is in the public sphere, but not openly. In America, it's more open. So there are different ways of working on the modernist project with regards to religion here, which I don't have much time to go in detail, unfortunately. But what I'm trying to argue very quickly is that when we speak about multiple modernities, that each country may have different sets of modernity, different ways of being modern, different ways of having a modernist project, of moving forward. But a way of moving forward that can include religion or discuss religion. There are also divisions within countries. Not everyone agrees on the same project, on the same modern project. And very quickly, we've been inspired by a research done by As Gilliat-Ray on the multi-faith, on universities, the way chaplaincies are used in universities. And she found the typologies of chaplaincies at university. And she speaks about the multi-faith pragmatic type of university. And this is a quote from a book with reference to chaplaincies at university that use a multi-faith pragmatist type. I'll get the link to modernity very soon. But here, this is a quote. This is a facility used by all religious groups, but with a separate specially designated area for Muslim prayers. The university interprets secular to mean that special privilege should not be accorded to particular religious groups, while also recognizing distinctive needs, notably of Muslims. It promotes its religious spaces as one aspect of student provision and equal opportunity, and goes beyond neutral tolerance of diversity towards a positive recognition of different religious identities. So why don't make a leap forward and use that typology to work on a definition of a multi-faith pragmatist modernity, if it works in that sense, towards a multi-faith pragmatic modernity in Australia. This is an assumption that we can test. But here the challenge in Australia will be to move towards what could be called a multi-faith pragmatic modernity, meaning by this that Australia should have a modernity which is secular in the sense that no special privilege be given to particular religious groups, and that each group have recognition of the distinctive needs or the practice of law. Do we find this in Australia? We find at certain levels, but not all levels. Other levels, we find another type of modernity, and this is influenced by the work of Jakubowicz. This is the new Australian conservative modernity that Jakubowicz makes reference to, speak about the resurgent social values of Christian conservatism, active government priorities of disengagement, expanding culture of surveillance and obedience, makes reference to a retreat from multiculturalism that resulted from the conservative Orwell government. And this is the work from Fosda. So here, theoretically speaking, can we speak about two different types of modernity that's happening in Australia, ways of moving forward, but in different directions? And here to synthesize, and I already mentioned the work by Anne Black on the good and the bad Sharia, and we were able to demonstrate this in the news articles, that Sharia in finances is seen as a good Sharia, and other parts of Sharia is seen as bad Sharia. And there's even calls for changes in taxation law in Australia to fit with Islamic banking requirement. And Australia is claimed to have the potential to become the financial hub of Southeast Asia. So with regard to the multi-faith pragmatic modernist project that I mentioned to you, this type that I was questioning, can it work in Australia? The argument is that with regards to Islamic finance, it seems to be working, it seems to be happening. There seems to be some changes happening in Australia.
For my part, so I will focus on the specificities of the Swiss context, talking about first the Sharia perception within the Swiss context, and then the Swiss perception of the Islamic law. Because we realized that in Switzerland, I don't know if you remember the numbers, but in Switzerland there was also a lot of critical article about Islamic finance, which was not the case in Sydney. So the idea was there's two things that interest me in this research. The first one was the link between the foreign context, so when they're talking about Sharia in Egypt, in Nigeria, or in Saudi Arabia, and when they're talking about Sharia in Switzerland or in Sydney, because both are very linked. If we think about the media logic, if we want to be effective, you need to get an echo. Something happened in Nigeria. If there is nothing then in our countries, it will stay 2 days and then we forget it. And it was clear in Switzerland, and it will be the first part, the importance of the local context to use that terminology, and then to use for sometimes increase the tensions that exist within the Western societies. And the second point, the good and bad Sharia. It was also clearly visible when we were talking about Islamic finance. So it was clearly visible also in Switzerland, but with that balance, with negative aspect. And that will be the second part. Why in Switzerland is it not so positive when we are talking about Islamic finance? So to keep in mind, to understand the reality of the Swiss or Geneva context, I've got three elements. The first one, when do we start to talk about Sharia in the local press in Geneva? It was 2002. So long before the study we were trying to do that, we start in 2008 or 9. So in Switzerland, it was 2002 when Annie Ramadan, which is a very famous religious leader in Geneva, had written an article in the journal Le Monde in Paris, where he was defending the Sharia law. And it was a big mess in Switzerland, and the cantonal authorities, they, I've got the expression, they suspended Ramadan for his teaching. So he was teacher and Islamic leaders. So after the article, he was suspended, but he refused the sanction, and the trial lasted 6 years. That means that during 6 years, every few months, we had something in the newspapers talking about Sharia, and it was corporal punishment. Because in the article, at the same time, he was denouncing the stoning of a young woman in Nigeria, but after that, he was doing an exegesis of the good thing of applying Sharia in the modern world. So that means that it was very negative for the image of Islam and Sharia. So 2002. Then the second point. The finance license was given to the Faysal Privat Banking by the Swiss bank board authorities. That means that it was a recognition of, yes, we've got an Islamic bank in Switzerland who respect the rules as all the other banks. It was in 2006. And the third one, all the debate, the public debate toward the Minaret ban votation in 2009. So from 2008, the beginning of the campaign, until the result, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion within the medias, and Sharia was always there. Even if it was about the general application of Sharia, but it was there. It means that the link between the local context and the foreign context, well, it's obvious. Because if there is only a woman stoned in Nigeria, okay, it's shocking, 2 days, and then we go on. But if at the same time you've got some religious leader in Geneva who is talking about Sharia, then we'll get the link. And that link will be used by the media, or by some medias, to play with the tensions that exist, and even increasing nowadays when we are talking about Islam and Muslims in Europe. Second point, why the good Sharia is not so good after all in Switzerland. So I think I've got 4 points. So again, the good thing. So Islamic investment, it's a new business with great perspective. That's true. It's new and there is a market. But then we found some articles saying that, okay, it may be there is expectative, there is perspectives, but the success is not as good as it was expected. Then the negative image. There is still a negative image when we are talking about Islam or Sharia. It's not very positive. So even if it's not as bad as when we're talking about corporal punishment, there is a negative feelings when we are using those words. Then the second point, Islamic investment is ethic, social, and responsible. Okay, yes. But then, countries like as Saudi Arabia and Qatar, maybe not the most, with the best ambassador when we're talking about values or ethic. So yes, it can be ethic and social, but, and I will come back to that point later on. If they want to be credible, they have maybe to be careful on what kind of argument to use, do we use. And then hypocrisy of Western financial institutions. Okay, Islam is very bad when we're talking about mosque, minaret, veil, but suddenly it becomes very interesting and okay when it's about money. Same critique about hypocrisy for Muslim investors. Okay, they are asking for Islamic finance to be in harmony with their beliefs, but then money is money. And sometimes, okay, but mostly if we are talking about Saudi Arabia or other countries, it's okay, we need Islamic finance because it's politically correct to ask for that, but then we need profit. And if we can have better profit elsewhere, we go elsewhere. Third point, Islamic investment is cautious and secure. It means that most of the dangerous finance toxic products can be stripped out from the client portfolio, which is true, yes. But after the real estate crisis in 2008 in Dubai, it's not so secure after all, because they lost billions of dollars. And if Abu Dhabi hadn't come to save Dubai, it would have been bankruptcy. So the argument of it's cautious and secure, yes, it could be, but be careful. And another, the local perspective, corporate stock like UBS and Credit Suisse, they lost more than 5% after the Dubai crisis. That means that even within the financial institution, the financial world in Geneva, that idea of Islamic finance is only positive, all positive. No, 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 no. We have to be careful because we lost. And the last one, no, it's not the last one, I'm not sure. So the Islamic investment is seen as a good compromise between economical action and religious beliefs. Okay, and it's true. Some Muslims, they are honest, they've got money, and they want to invest and to be in harmony with what they believe. Okay, nothing wrong with that. And then that means that if we think in an economical way, if we want to improve things, that means more Islam. And that means more Islam, the idea of some people in the West, the fear of Islamization. So if we want to improve the Islamic finance, that means there is more Islam. Be careful. So that will be the counter-argument that people will use. And then Adam talked about the multiple and diverse interpretation of Sharia. That means who will decide the rules of Islamic finance? The ulama in Mecca or Medina, someone in London, in New York. So it will be how do we do to fight that ambiguity and that lack of transparency? But who decide? And about among what criterion to decide which is Islamically correct or not. And then the last one, Islamic investment, which is based on irrational and superstitions, means that it could be counterproductive if we think about economic criterion. And in conclusion, of just 3 points. So even though we can talk about good Sharia, there is still the negative impact of the Islamic terminology. But we can maybe use that. I was talking about the tensions that are growing up in Europe, or at least in Europe, maybe here, I'm not sure. The fact that Islamic finance is still seen positively can be used to show people, Muslim and non-Muslim, that if we are careful about the word that we use, we can show that most of the time the religious terminology is used or instrumentalized for other purpose. So to say that maybe we are putting religion where it has nothing to do. So it can be useful to take that Islamic finance as a tool to counter Islamophobic discourse. Second point, so since the 90s, banks have been able to propose tricks that allow to go around religious norms. The word tricks is maybe not the ideal one, but I use it in purpose to say that for me it's the special or the key element of the problematic, the credibility. If people see the religious norm or the Murabaha, for example, only as a trick, there's nothing religious behind that. It's just a trick to, okay, there's a norm, or to do to pass the norm. It won't work. So the professional of Islamic finance, they have to find a way to say that, no, it's not only a trick. It's really to help you believers to find an harmony between what you believe and how to deal with your money. Because if they don't do that, and it's a bit what we are seeing now in Geneva, most of the clients, they have more confidence toward local banks. That, okay, we know how you work, and if the local banks, they are able to propose some ethical alternative, which they are doing, so there will be competency with the Islamic institution. We are talking about ethic, and you don't need to be Muslim to propose some ethical front. And the last point, Faysal Privat Bank, which received the authorization in 2006, is for sale. So after the Dubai crisis, it was so bad managed that now it's really bankruptcy. And I just quote one of the sentence of the manager. Our management made two big mistakes. Not enough diversity and not enough control of our partners. That means lack of professionalism and incompetency. And that may be the core of the problems. That maybe the key things is that simply means that in finance, like in education, for example, it's not enough to say Islamic to get the solution. Before being Islamic, a bank is a bank. Before being Islamic, a school is a school. So sometimes, again, be professional first, and then you will be able to propose some good products for your target, which is, in that case, the Muslim community. And I will finish there.